But first, there is something seriously wrong in our schools. Now, I think we kind of already knew that to some degree. We knew the curriculum wasn't up to scratch. We know our academic results are slipping. But to learn today that police were called to schools 20,000 times in New South Wales alone last year, I think makes it abundantly clear how bad things are. That's 53 call-outs every single day. Nearly 3,000 of them were for assault, 685 were for sexual touching, and 411 were for other sexual assaults. There were 210 school days in New South Wales last year, so that's 14 assaults, 3 cases of sexual touching, and 2 sexual assaults every school day. And this is just one state. I mean, extrapolate that out across the rest of the country, and we have a real problem. Now, I'm a young man. I left high school 8 or 9 years ago. I went to a public school in Adelaide's northeastern suburbs, and I reckon the police would have been called to my school maybe a handful of times during my time there. I certainly don't remember there being an issue with assaults bad enough to call the police or any kind of sexual assaults within the school. And the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics says there was a 34% increase in assaults on school grounds between 2021 and 2022, and a 116% increase in sexual offences in the same period. Even when school closures due to COVID are accounted for, both stats are higher. The school system is broken. Students are not getting the education they deserve. And when children have no direction, they start to act out. The numbers are shocking, no doubt about that, but they shouldn't be surprising. The writing has been on the wall for a long time. Nearly half of school children are now failing to meet national standards for reading and maths, according to the latest program for international student assessment results. The average Year 10 student is now a year behind their counterparts 20 years ago. The curriculum has been rewritten umpteen times in that period. Billions upon billions upon billions of dollars have been thrown at the system at the insistence of the unions, and yet nothing has improved. We had a failing system before, now we have an even more expensive failing system. In South Australia, where I am right now, student suspensions have hit record numbers of 5,000 a year. It was between 3,600 and 3,800 a year for a decade. It all fits the trend of there being something wrong with the school system. So what has the Education Department done? Not crack down on bad behaviour or recognise that the system is failing students and that's why you have more problems. No, that'd make too much sense, wouldn't it? Instead, we learn today, they've tightened the rules for suspending students in the hopes it'll mean fewer are sent home. Seems as though they've been to the Anastasia Palaszczuk School of Reducing Crime, because she, as Queensland Premier, changed drug laws so you could be caught with ice, cocaine or heroin 3 times before you faced a criminal charge. If you can't be charged, of course, then you can't show up in the crime statistics. And if it's harder for schools to suspend you, then voila, the suspension stats will go down. Now, principals apparently have to take into account a student's age and developmental stage, amongst other things, when considering suspension. South Australian Education Minister Blair Boyer told the Advertiser today, quote, "We know that Aboriginal children and children with a disability are overrepresented in suspensions and exclusions, and frankly, that's not acceptable." So instead of saying, hang on a minute, we have a bunch of students here who are clearly getting themselves into trouble because they're neglected or they're not being educated properly or they have other problems, you decide you'll make it harder to suspend them. Don't fix the problem. Don't deal with the root cause. Don't help the students. Just say, oh, well, we can't suspend you so easily. Makes the stats look good, but it does nothing to fix the root cause, and that is the education system and the home. The whole thing needs to be blown up and started again. We have to get back to basics. I mean, for one, get the politics out of the classroom. I know I've talked about this before, But a Western Sydney University study last year found that 2/3 of students don't connect with things such as Federation and the Anzacs. They instead say they prefer Indigenous perspectives and learning about the stolen generations and exploring history through refugee stories. That's obviously because the teachers have led them in that direction. And look what we have to show for it. Results going backwards and misbehaviour soaring. The kids are rudderless, and to be quite frank, it's not their fault. It's the fault of those running the system. And some in the system are quite happy with the way things are because it makes their students helpful pawns in their socialist dream. Look at all the kids who've been out protesting for Palestine, for instance. When they're asked why they're there and what it all means, they don't know. They shout Allah Akbar. They're asked what it means. They don't know. What we're doing isn't working. The numbers make it clearer by the day. And if we don't do something about it now, it'll only get worse.